Joseph Stalin, the 20th century dictator of the Soviet Union, was known for silencing his opponents by any means possible. He carried out arrests and killings at the slightest suspicion. The number of his victims easily ran into millions. In the early 1950s, as part of an anti-Semitic campaign, Stalin spread a rumor that Jewish doctors from the Kremlin were plotting to assassinate key members of the government. The trial against the Kremlin doctors was to commence within weeks. In 1953, he was 73 and not in his best health. It is said that he suffered a stroke, but his assistants hesitated to call a doctor for almost 24 hours because of the ongoing purge. They believed that calling a doctor would mean going against the dictator and they would be punished for it. Hence, his image as an unrivaled dictator, achieved by committing brutal crimes, was responsible for his agonizing death. One can never escape their deeds. The consequences show up sooner or later. This is the concept of karma, which is often colloquially understood as a form of retribution and justice provided by nature. It is seen as part of a natural order of things, called riti in Vedic terminology. But karma is not merely retribution, otherwise it would become an anthropocentric concept. Karma rather is a more fundamental law that applies to the entire cosmos. The word karma is derived from the Sanskrit word karman, meaning act. The law of karma in its different aspects may be regarded as the law of the conservation of moral values. The concept is beautifully described in a stanza of the book The Light of Asia by Sir Edwin Arnold. That which ye sow, ye reap. See yonder fields. The sesamum was sesamum, the corn was corn. The silence and the darkness knew. So is a man's fate born? Here the present circumstances of a person are termed as fate. But this fate is not an arbitrary assignment. It is the result of our past actions. Just as a seed grows into a plant, our past actions fructify into our current circumstances, which we have to bear and term as fate. It is neither God's injustice nor demonic mischief that we face evil. Our suffering is due to our own actions. Further, our current actions determine the condition of the future. Hence, we ourselves determine our destiny. Good begets good, and vice versa. But this philosophical conception has a flaw and is still incomplete. We often see that there is injustice in this world. Very often, corrupt and powerful get away with serious crimes, while innocents suffer. This experiential fact does not sit well with the law of karma. This is where the metaphysical concept of rebirth comes in. Rebirth is one of the central tenets of Indian religious teachings. It refers to the idea that the soul can begin a new life after the death of its physical body in another body. The impressions of karma, called samskara, can transfer from one life to the next. Hence, if someone seems to be suffering disproportionately, then it can be explained by their bad deeds in the past lives. Similarly, if the misdeeds of a person remain unaccountable in the present life, one can be sure that karma will catch up in the next life. Karma is not only the action and its consequences, it is also the force that assigns the fruits of actions to the individuals. Karma is impartial, unbiased, and devoid of empathy. It simply acts as a rule follower without any favor or ill will towards its recipients. During one's lifetime, one performs actions and accumulates its fruits. These are born in the next life, but again by the virtue of performing actions. The cycle repeats itself. Gautama, the Buddha, identified this vicious cycle and named it Sansara Chakra, which is a form of bondage of the self. It is easy to see why. Consider an analogy. You are stuck in a time loop like the 1993 movie Groundhog Day. You wake up every day, which can be seen as analogous to being born. You live throughout the day, and when you sleep, it is equivalent to death. Repeating this cycle every day without memory of the previous day would result in endless monotony. Present-day existential philosophers may recognize it as an existential against a process without a purpose. In the context of multiple lives lived through rebirth, this despair can intensify to an even greater degree, from which even death cannot save. Because this sense of entrapment, this endless cycle, is termed bondage. A release from this bondage is liberation or moksha. It is caused by the breaking of the endless cycle of rebirth. In Advaita Vedanta, the cycle is broken by realizing the true nature of self as an external, unchanging and blissful soul which is not affected by changes in the body. In Buddhism, the realization of reality as ever-changing and impermanent will result in nirvana, a concept similar to moksha. As everything is impermanent, there will not be any attachment to worldly objects. Hence, cessation of desire will occur. The role of karma, both as a law and as an action, has a significant role to play in the bondage and liberation of the soul. The karmas which have not yet begun to bear fruits are called anaradha karma. They are either already created by past actions or are being gathered in this life. Those karmas which have begun to bear fruits are called prarabdha karmas. With the right knowledge, karmas stop gathering in the present life, while prarabdha karma keep on bearing fruits till they are exhausted. It is compared to a potter's wheel on which force is no longer applied, but it keeps on rotating for quite some time due to momentum. Looking from a scientific point of view, the concept of karma as natural justice is not empirically verifiable, but its origin can be explained psychologically. The optimism provided by order, morality, and justice are enough to save human minds from the despair of chaos. The yearning for order is one of the most fundamental desires of human beings. Faith is an eternal moral order, has led to belief in the concept of karma. It can provide psychological satisfaction as well as become a source of morality. Religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism did not believe in a theistic God, but the theory of karma filled in for its lack. The general consensus about behaving in a karma-aware way requires one to engage in actions that are not considered socially bad and have no adverse consequences for others. So, when we talk about karma, we talk about engaging in pro-social behavior. The theory of karma turns a person towards spirituality. A Buddhist will regard his property as property, but not as his. He will regard his body as body, but not as his, and will regard his sensations and ideas as sensations and ideas, but not as his. There is no truth in the thought that this is mine and I have all these things. If there is anything a man can truly call his own, it is not what he possesses, but what he does. It is the action that needs to be perfected, not the agent performing the action. Along with the concept of action comes the notion of responsibility for an action. When an ethical dilemma presents itself in front of us, we are forced to make hard choices. Although we are free to choose any option, we cannot refrain from making a choice. In the words of Jean-Paul Sartre, man is condemned to be free. Any choice necessarily brings with itself consequences. Hence, one should accept these consequences and bear the responsibility of making a choice in order to have an authentic existence. The karma theory, by its nature, makes the agent responsible for his choices. Hence, believing in the law of karma and acting in its accordance will grant an authentic existence. The theory of karma over the centuries has guided and refined human conduct. It ultimately culminated into the practically applicable techniques of karma yoga as given in the Bhagavad Gita. The Srimad Bhagavad Gita gives a beautiful example of how the law of karma should be interpreted in times of crisis. During the Mahabharata war, when Arjuna faces his cousins and relatives on the enemy's side, he faces a conflict of conscience. His mouth is drying, his legs are shaking, his mind is distracted, and the bow is falling from his hands. He thinks that war would involve killing his own relatives and decides to surrender. At this moment, Krishna, his charioteer, guides him to follow his duty. With this background, Bhagavad Gita describes how to achieve perfection in karma so that one can easily tide over times of crisis. The Bhagavad Gita says, "Your right is to the work only, and never to the fruit thereof. Do not be the cause of the fruit of action, nor let your attachment lead to inaction. The shlok dictates how one should perform actions. A person has the ability to perform work to the extent of which he is free. The actions performed should not be based on speculated results. The results emanating from our actions may be a success or a failure. One should not consider themselves to be the cause of their actions, even if the outcome is successful. Also, one should not try to avoid taking action, even if discouraged by failures. There should be a focus on performing the duties in a detached manner and not expecting a particular outcome. This is indeed a very difficult task because for the majority of us, motivation to do work only comes from a particular desired outcome. You may work hard, do 2 jobs, and sleep less, but all this is done to achieve a better life. If someone says that you should not expect the outcome of a better life even after working hard, it seems unacceptable and unjust. It also seems to be opposing the basic human nature of acting on desires, which are very well portrayed in the words of William Wordsworth. The eye cannot choose but see. We cannot bid the ear be still. Our bodies feel wherever they be, against or with our will. Disinterested action, hence, may seem like a psychological impossibility. But one who understands the true nature of karma finds himself beyond the rules of psychological understanding. He becomes a perfect personality, a karma yogi. In order to achieve the state of karma yogi, the first step should be to cultivate a better understanding of our circumstances. Our expectations should be based on what we can control, that is, our desires and actions. The outcome of our circumstances are beyond our control, so expecting them to work as per our wishes is futile and results in mental and physical agony. Actions devoid of expectations are called nishkam karma and is the key to crisis resolution in most modern settings, such as the workplace, relationships, society, politics, etc. The characters in Mahabharata are not completely black and white. There is no clear hero and villain. Even the most righteous commits sins like gambling. Most characters seem to be right from their point of view. This is the kind of situation that we generally face in our everyday lives. No deeds are absolutely good or absolutely bad. Neither actions are committed in isolation because they have an effect not only on the doer but also on others. The Bhagavad Gita helps us to assess our actions by eliminating the dichotomy of good and bad karma. Rather, it uses the terminology of skillful and unskillful karma. A similar concept is also seen in Buddhism. This selfless or desireless action is an action performed without any expectation of fruits or results. It is skillful action and forms the central tenet of Karma Yoga's path to liberation. Karma Yoga is described in chapter 2, verse 48 and verse 50 of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna performs his duties established in yoga, renouncing attachment, and is even-minded in success and failure. Evenness of mind is called yoga. Endowed with equanimity, one sheds in this life both good and evil. Therefore, strive for the practice of this yoga of equanimity. Skill in action lies in the practice of this yoga. Nishkam karma should not be confused with renunciation of action. Rather, it is renunciation in action. Bhagavad Gita does not preach inaction, but it preaches detached action. Performing karma is a duty and a part of our natural order. Hence, one cannot escape karma, but one can always choose to act in a detached manner. Mere knowledge of the law of karma is not enough to induce moral behavior. Had Stalin known that his karma would bear consequences upon him, would it stop him from his excesses? It does not seem likely, because the desire for power still existed in him. Control of desire, along with knowledge of the law of karma, together will result in selfless action. A person who becomes truly selfless and without desires does not stop action. Karma is important in our lives, as due to them we are alive. One who does not perform karma is simply dead. Hence, instead, a perfect person takes action for the benefit of others. Further, the purpose of Nishkam karma is not the annihilation of all desires. Rather, it is a merging of all desires into one supreme desire, the desire for the development of spiritual life, the desire for liberation from the cycle of birth and death, the desire for achieving perfection in action. All actions, therefore, should be inspired by this supreme desire. The betterment of our spiritual life is the single motive and the only end prescribed for all our actions.